Hey everybody, it's Eric from epautos.com, your libertarian car guy. Wanted to do a little short video monologue here about something that I'm going to publish tomorrow. You may have heard the news that apparently the Trump administration is pursuing indictments of James Comey, the former FBI head, and Letitia James, the prosecutor in New York who went after Trump. And here's what I think about that, if anybody cares. On the one hand, you know, we're supposed to cheer because the federal government, the Justice Department, is apparently going after Trump's enemies. Whatever happened to going after our enemies, i.e. the enemies of the people? It's just very frustrating to me. I don't really care about James Comey. James Comey didn't do anything to me personally, and probably not to you either. Probably not to most Americans. I'm not saying he's not a creep, a bad guy, yada, yada, yada. Same for Letitia Jones. But I want to know why there aren't any indictments forthcoming for people like Dr. Fauci, who did do something to hundreds of millions of us, and who is a criminal by any objective standards, and not in the sense of procedural standards that he transgressed some rule or other about how things are supposed to happen. This is a man who was complicit in what they called at the time gain of function research, meaning, they enhanced the lethality of viruses, which were then loosed, whether inadvertently or deliberately, on the world, and we ended up with COVID and the pandemic. And the entire population of the world basically got tortured for years with mask mandates and lockdowns and all the stuff that they did to us. And politically in this country, things like assuring the election of Joe Biden via mass absentee balloting and election months rather than election day, and all the other awful stuff that occurred. And yet not one of these malicious, malevolent people is even under investigation as far as I'm aware, let alone going to be indicted. Why is that? That's just a really startling thing to me. It always seems to be the same thing, that the truly criminal people at the highest echelons and highest levels of the government are never held to account for anything that they do. Occasionally they'll toss a few mid-level fish to the sharks in the form of chum, but it's never anything meaningful. It's never anything important. And, speaking of indictments, how about Trump indicting himself? Let's begin with just the latest thing that's in the news before we circle back. He's using the federal government, or he did use the federal government's power to bully and threaten Jimmy Kimmel, or rather Jimmy Kimmel's employer. And I don't like Jimmy Kimmel. And I don't know the man personally, but I should say I don't think he's funny. I don't watch his show, but that's utterly beside the point. The man had a right to his opinions, the right to do his show, and if people don't like his opinions, well, they don't have to watch his show, and if his ratings stink, then his employer can cancel his show. But this idea of the federal government using its power to go after people because they don't like what they say, well, where did we hear that before? One of the reasons that I held my nose and voted for Trump back in 2024 was because I was just so tired of Biden and the leftists in the federal government using the power of the federal government to go after people who disagreed with the left or who made fun of the left. Remember all of that? Have people forgotten all of that? I think a lot of people voted for Trump because they were tired of that. And here we go again. Now Trump is doing exactly the same thing. So basically all he's doing is cementing in place the precedent, the third world banana republic precedent, that when you have power, you use it against your enemies. Never the enemies of the people, only against your political enemies. Now, getting back to the other thing, Trump could have ended the emergency that he declared in early 2020. Anybody remember that? I will give him the benefit of the doubt, and I will, not say anything about him disparaging with regard to the initial declaration of the emergency. That whole thing caught everybody kind of off guard. Nobody really knew what was going on. So I don't fault him for that. What I do fault him for is not ending the emergency by fall 2020, when it was very, very evident that everything was hyper-exaggerated, blown out of all proportion, and things far worse than that they were doing. And yet he didn't. And by not doing it, he handed off to Joe Biden the authority to continue the emergency and continue all of the awful things that had begun in 2020. So, how about holding Trump responsible for that? Maybe there should be a indictments forwarded against Trump for not ending the emergency, which also allowed the pushing of his lovely, beautiful, warp-speeded vaccines into the unwilling bodies of millions of people who were coerced into taking it, which, by the way, is a war crime under the Nuremberg standard. The standard that was used to hang doctors who worked for National Socialist Germany, who performed medical procedures on unwilling people without informed consent. And that's exactly what was done to people during COVID. So anyway, that's my rant. I'm going to have an article about that up on the site that'll be published probably later today, by tomorrow at the latest. I hope you'll swing by and check it out. And if you have any comments here, hope you'll leave them there as well. And if you like what you found here, hit the like button, whatever it is that people are supposed to do, and let others know, and we'll have more for you again soon.